Walker from Huntington Beach State Park.
So today we are going to be talking sea turtles, and it is sea turtle season. But before we get into sea turtle season, we want to talk briefly about the new, we are open. We opened on Friday, and it's been going pretty well, but our crowds have been big, and we're glad that everyone's coming back to the parks. But a couple things to keep in mind, try to come at off hours if it's really hot and nice, especially because parks have been closing and reaching capacity throughout the entire state. It's not just been the beach parks. And so also remember to keep your social distancing. Mike and I all day today are going to be the length of 2 loggerheads or a cooler turtle we're going to talk about later that you'll just have to wait and see which one we're talking about. Some of you might know already. And always remember also to bring your own hand sanitizer, maybe gloves. Safety is your responsibility. But also pack your patience because, if the lines are long, you might want to come another time, pick a different trail, pick a different section of area to go. So just keep all that in mind. So now that we've done our safety talk, we're going to take off our masks and get into the program with sea turtles. And so again, it is sea turtle season here in South Carolina, and the main turtle that nests here in South Carolina is the Loggerhead sea turtle, South Carolina state reptile. And Mike is going to talk next about the skull and everything, but we have, so far in South Carolina, we have about 5 nests, and it's all mainly south of Myrtle Beach State Park and Huntington Beach State Park. And there is one nest up in North Carolina, though, Fort Fisher. So we do have one nest north of us, so eventually they're going to come in between us. So that's really exciting. I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
All right, so let's learn a bit more about the Loggerhead sea turtle. And we actually have a few parts of a sea turtle that will help us learn a little bit more about these animals. And normally when I'm doing this presentation in front of a group of people out on the beach, one of the first things I would do is encourage the kids to play a little game of pin the brain on the sea turtle. So if you look in here, at first you might think the brain would go in these large cavities here. No, actually the brain fits in this little tiny hole I can barely stick my finger in. But that's fine. Sea turtles and other reptiles, they can get by with small brains because they operate on instinct. Us humans, big mammals, we've got this big brain because we know practically nothing when we're first born. We have to learn things throughout our life. But with a sea turtle, from the moment they hatch out of the egg, they know pretty much whatever they're going to have to know for the rest of their life. So what does the rest of this space go for? That's actually for muscles to power their jaws. Loggerhead sea turtles have extremely powerful jaws, which they need because they eat a lot of things that have hard shells. Things like whelks, horseshoe crabs, other true species of crabs. And to eat those hard-shelled animals takes a lot of muscle power. To make room for that muscle, you got to have a great big skull. And if you have a great big skull, someone's going to call you Loggerhead. So that's what the name refers to. And the other thing, when you think of turtles, what do all turtles have? A shell. Well, believe it or not, a turtle shell is made of something that each and every one of us have inside of our own body. Right here, underneath your skin and your muscles, you have your rib cage. And then in your back, you have your spine. So this is actually a rib from a sea turtle, and you see the ribs are different than ours. They're very wide, flattened out, and the edges meet together like a jigsaw puzzle, or how the bones in your skull form. So that provides the turtle with a very hard shell and provides it with a lot of protection. All right.
Hey Mike, can a turtle leave its shell?
That's a great question, Ann. Actually, no, they can't. Yeah, for turtles, that shell is part of their skeleton, and they can no more leave it than you could leave your own skeleton. So it's part of their body, not a home.
All right, so this is a shell of a green sea turtle, and as Mike was saying, the rib bones would make up the top part of the carapace. Top part of the shell is called a carapace. So again, we're going to be talking Loggerhead sea turtles, and again, we've had about at least 5 different sea turtles nesting in South Carolina. And what they'll do, they weigh about 200 to 300 pounds, loggerheads do. And when they come up, usually in the night, because it's cooler, it's safer from predators. And again, you probably have heard the saying, sea turtles dig the dark. So they do, and we'll talk more about lights later at the end, but turtles really do prefer darker beaches. And so what they're going to do, they're going to come up. They don't always come up at high tide, it sure would be easier, right, Mike? Gosh, it would be so much easier. Think about, so if you go to the beach, or even if you're in your own backyard in your house right now, get down on your belly or your plastron. Here would be your carapace. Here's your plastron. Get down and start crawling. Imagine, as a loggerhead, you're 200 to 300 pounds coming up to lay your eggs. And you're going to leave behind the most brilliant footprint, I think, on the planet, is the crawl. We call this a crawl, the turtle track. And this shows us that a sea turtle's been up the night before. And I also call it a TSI, a turtle scene investigation, because she's left behind clues of what's going on, which direction she came from. Was she up for a couple hours? It could take 1 to 2 hours for her to come up, crawl up on the beach, dig her nest, which Mike will talk about a little bit later, lay her eggs, cover her nest back up, and go back in. And so it's a pretty grueling process for them. When you think about it, they spend most of their life in the ocean. So only the females come back ashore on the East Coast to come up and lay their eggs. And so they'll leave behind this crawl, and we can also determine if she laid eggs, if she threw sand. So this, again, we call a TSI. So if you're walking on the beach, especially early in the morning, and you see this, please do not disturb it, because folks will be coming in, sea turtle volunteers, park rangers, lots of different people throughout the whole state of South Carolina. There's probably over, I think, 1,800 volunteers who help sea turtles in the state of South Carolina. Many of them are already hit the beach at 6 a.m. this morning, and they're looking for this crawl, and then they'll also decide, is the nest in a safe spot? Do they need to relocate it? And then, if we have found eggs, we will put up this sign. And last year, there was over 8,800 nests in the state of South Carolina. We smashed the record. And the question is, what will happen this year? So what happens when they come up on the beach, Mike?
All right, so the mother turtle will come up onto the beach. Usually she's going to crawl up beyond the spring tide line. That usually marks the highest high tide of the month. First thing she's going to do is she's going to build a big pit called a body pit. She's going to do that to get a little bit of extra depth through the nest. Now, once she's excavated that body pit, which will be about 3 to 4 foot in diameter, she's going to use her hind flippers alone to begin excavating the nest chamber. That nest chamber is going to look a little bit like an upside-down light bulb, old school incandescent light bulb. And she's going to use her hind flippers. She can cup them just like you can cup your hand to scoop down the sand. Once she has got the nest completed, she's then going to start dropping eggs into the hole through her cloaca, which is a tube that comes out from underneath of her tail. Each of the eggs is about the size of a ping pong ball. The texture is a little bit different. They're actually very flexible and leathery. That helps ensure that they're not going to get broken when she drops them into the nest chamber. Also, when those eggs are laid, they're covered in a great deal of mucus, so it's a pretty slimy job. Once she has dropped that last egg in there, she's going to immediately start covering the nest up. So use her hind flippers to do that, to push the sand in there and pack it down good. She'll then crawl on top of the nest, and actually lifting herself up, her front flippers is going to pound down on the nest and pack it down apart. That's important. She doesn't want salt sand to filter down amongst the eggs. She wants to have a big cavity in there, some extra space, because when those eggs start to hatch 45 to 70 days later, those little hatchlings are going to have room to kind of spread out. They have a little, this is a model of a hatchling here. They have a little tooth called an egg tooth on the tip of their nose, just like a baby bird would have, to help them cut through that egg. Now, when they first come out of the egg, they're folded almost in half. They have a big sac, or yolk sac, from their belly, about where a turtle's belly button would be, if turtles had such a thing. And they're actually going to live in that nest for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days before they emerge. They're going to absorb that yolk sac, which is kind of like a bag lunch their mama left them with. So when the turtles emerge from the nest, they're going to be chock full of energy to make that trip down the beach and into the ocean. And they're not going to have to worry about finding food for the first few days. One of the cues they use to let them know when it's safe to come out of the nest is the drop in temperature. I think a lot of people are under the impression that seagulls eat most of the baby turtles, and that is simply not true. I'm not saying that never happens, but that would be pretty rare. The fact of it is, most of these nests hatch out in the middle of the night, mainly because it's just cooler then. You may know this if you've ever gone barefoot down to the edge of the water and burnt your feet on the hot sand. So that hot sand would be a big threat to those little hatchlings. And then one other thing that's important to know. Early on, in fact, right when we first find the nest, we use a blunt-ended wooden stick that we're trained to use to help feel for that cavity, that empty space between the eggs. That's when we find the nest chamber to protect it. But also, for the last few years, in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia, we've been sacrificing one egg out of every nest for a very important research project. And Ann's going to tell you a little bit more about that.
I am, but a couple things I want to mention with Mike is I think the number one question that everybody who works with sea turtles, and we do have to have permits to work with sea turtles that are threatened and endangered. So if you don't have a permit, you're not even allowed to have a dead egg. So keep that in mind, y'all. But the number one question we get is, what time do those nests hatch out? Because I want to see baby turtles hatch. And the answer we have is, I liken it to pregnant women. You have a due date. But, most women don't have their babies on their due date. And so we have no idea when these nests are going to emerge because, as Mike mentioned, it's about temperature. So it could have been a cooler day. It could have been rain. It could have been... There's so many different factors, it's impossible to determine when a nest is going to hatch out. So we don't sit on nests, and we don't know when they're going to emerge. So keep that in mind. I know everybody wants to see it, but it's really difficult. Okay, so DNA. So we've been doing this study since 2010 in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And as Mike said, once we find a nest, we confirm that there's eggs there, and we take one egg out of every single nest, and as Mike said, we sacrifice it. And you might be going, we're sacrificing endangered species. But the amount of data that we're getting is really amazing. So first we're going to take an egg, and we're gonna break it open, and we're gonna get rid of the yolk. Because the yolk has, and that was just, just a craft thing, y'all. It wasn't a real egg. Just give me an example. But we're looking for the maternity, the mother DNA of this. This is not about what the male sea turtles are doing. We don't know a whole lot about male sea turtles, and that's a whole different study. Lots of different studies need to be done on that, but this is about the maternity of the nest. So we want to know, how often does a female loggerhead sea turtle lay eggs? Does she come back to the same exact spot at which she laid and where she was born? How many eggs does she lay at one time? What other questions? Do they come back? How often do they come back within the year, and then how many times they come back, in subsequent years? So all because we sacrifice one egg, we're getting it. So we get rid of the embryo, we put the eggshell that has the maternal DNA and a vial of ethanol, and then we write a code, and this one was from a couple years ago, so the first code would be 18, so that was the year. Every beach has a different code, and then number 1 was the first nest of the year. So all these then go to the University of Georgia in Athens, and they're doing this massive study. So here's a couple things we've learned. The number one thing that everyone says, sea turtles always come back to the same exact spot in which they nested, or maybe where they were born. And the answer we're finding is not always. And so, like Mike and I, so Mike works at Huntington Beach State Park, I work at Myrtle Beach State Park. We don't get many nests at Myrtle Beach State Park because we're only 1 mile, and we have lots of lights, and there's just so much development here in the Grand Strand. But I work on a lot of nests in the city of Myrtle Beach, and Huntington and the city of Myrtle Beach, last year, we had numerous turtles that laid eggs at Huntington and in the city of Myrtle Beach. Not the same beach, but about 10, 15 miles distance, give or take. So there's that. But there's also, to give you an idea, one turtle nested in 2012, and again in 2015, and again in 2019, and she nested 16 different times, and she nested all the way up in Cape Lookout, North Carolina, which is on the Outer Banks, and then all the way down to North Island, which is just around Georgetown area, north of Charleston. And so that's a pretty long distance of different nests that she's laying. So she hasn't honed in really on one spot. But then I think, Mike, you've had some turtles that Huntington, right?
Occasionally we'll have one that nests almost exclusively in the park. And then we've had the other extreme. One year we had a turtle that in the same nesting season nested in North Carolina at the park, and then down in Georgia.
Yeah.
So they're different strategies.
It's all over the map, and because we just take and sacrifice one egg. We have all this information. And I think the coolest data that we've got, there's so many different things, but we know because of all this data that there's at least over 11,000 adult loggerhead female sea turtles that have hit the beach at least once in the state of North Carolina, Georgia, or South Carolina. And if they've nested, that means they're at least, we didn't talk about this, they're at least 25 to 30, 35 years old. It takes them that long before they can lay their first nest. And so later on, Mike and I are going to talk about all the things you can do to help out, and we've kind of touched on some already. And it's critical because until they get to age 25, they're not laying any eggs yet. And so that's what we're finding out with this DNA thing. So it's really amazing, this study. Anything else to add, I think? Because we have 10 more minutes. Mike and I have so much we want to talk about. So I'm going to turn it over to, here it is, the social distancing turtle.
All right, so this is a leatherback sea turtle. This is the largest turtle in the entire world. And it's roughly about 6 foot long. So the length of a leatherback would be good, appropriate social distancing. And believe it or not, this is actually, right now, is probably one of the best times of the year.
Saw two yesterday from the fishing pier,
right.
two!
The pier here at Myrtle Beach State Park is a great viewing opportunity to actually get to see one of these rare animals in the wild. Now, why are we seeing so many of these leatherback sea turtles this time of year? It's all about the jellyfish. These sea turtles love jellyfish. That's almost their entire diet. And right now, if you've been to the beach in South Carolina in the last couple of weeks, you may have noticed there are a great number, especially of cannonball jellyfish washing ashore right now. Don't be afraid. Cannonball jellyfish cannot sting you. They technically have stinging cells because they won't let you be a jellyfish without those. But their stinging cells are designed to sting plankton, microscopic plankton. They cannot sting people, so you have nothing to fear from them. And that's what's drawing these huge leatherbacks in close to shore. Another neat thing about them, the name leatherback, from that you can guess it doesn't have a hard shell like the other sea turtles we've talked about. It has these distinct ridges and a very leathery shell. This is a turtle that spends the vast majority of its life far from shore. It is one of the deepest diving animals in the world. It can dive deeper than a submarine can. They have bones in their eyeballs. They have special spiny things in their throat that actually help them trap and swallow.
I have a picture, Mike, underneath. No, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, they have one of the craziest looking throats of any animal out there. Now, they only rarely nest in South Carolina. We did have one nest at Huntington quite a while back.
2000.
2000, yes. Yes, we had a single nest. We've not had one since then. But like I said, any of you come out to Myrtle Beach State Park to the fishing pier. By the way, you might want to consider visiting on a weekday if you can, rather than weekends when we're the busiest. If you're patient and spend your time, some binoculars would probably help you. But this is it's one of the best wildlife viewing opportunities that South Carolina has to offer.
In the past, we've been lucky enough, and don't expect to see this, you just got to get lucky. But also keep in mind, I live at the park, so I go every single day to look for leatherbacks when I'm off work. But sometimes they do come so close, we've seen them eat jellyfish right below us. I would say that's happened 5, 6, 7 times for me. Normally they're farther out, but still, you never know what you're going to see a giant leatherback, so it's pretty cool. Another turtle that does nest in South Carolina, it's our second most common nesting turtle, however. Remember, we had 8,800 loggerhead sea turtle nests last year. We had a record nesting amount of green sea turtles nesting in South Carolina last year, and I think there was 20 of them. So, big difference. But we have, the cool thing in Myrtle Beach area and Garden City area is really the hot spot for green sea turtle nesting in South Carolina. Myrtle Beach last year had a turtle that nested 7 times. And so, yeah. So we're going to talk about, loggerheads tend to nest 3 to 4 times in a season. The record is 9 times every 2 weeks. But greens will nest about 4 times on average, but this one probably nested 7 times. And they're a little bit larger than greens. They'll be about 300 to 400 pounds. If you've been to the Charleston Aquarium, the South Carolina Aquarium, they have a loggerhead in their tanks, and then they have the turtle hospital, so you'll see lots of turtles there. If you go to Ripley's Aquarium in Myrtle Beach, they have a green sea turtle, but they have a smaller head because and little serrations. They don't have teeth, but they have serrations as they get to be adults to help rip off seaweed and algae. So they're much different eaters. Leatherbacks, jellyfish. Loggerheads, clams, and crabs, and snails. And green sea turtles, as they get older, they're herbivores. So a whole lot different. And their eggs are even bigger, about the size of golf balls. And it looks like a bomb went off. That TSI, literally, it's a pit. You could fall into their pit. Very, very different nesting strategies. A great place to see juvenile green sea turtles is take a long walk. It's worth it up to the jetty at Huntington Beach State Park. And I would say June, July, August, even September. Almost, again, you have to be patient, y'all. You have to be patient when you're looking for wildlife. But it's very easy to see cute little juvenile green sea turtles.
Are they actually green?
No. Oh, good question, Barkley.
Because that doesn't look green.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't look green.
It's a good point.
It's a good point. So because of their what they eat, it turns their meat muscles green. And also back in the day, and still around the world where they're not protected, they're very good to eat. So they are protected, in obviously in the United States and other parts of the world, but not everywhere. And they became endangered. There was a cannery operation down in the Florida Keys in the early 70s before it shut down.
Is that the turtle soup?
That's turtle soup.
Oh.
One of the turtle soups. There's also freshwater snapping turtles.
Okay.
We're getting off topic.
Sorry.
There's so many things to talk about with sea turtles. I think I'm going to skip Kemp's, and I think we should talk what they can do.
All right.
Because I bet you there's also going to be some questions
Okay.
by people.
So, because sea turtles love the beach and people love the beach, we have to figure out ways to share the beach to ensure their survival. And there are actually quite a few things you can do to make sure that turtles are going to remain safe. So, one, if you're visiting at the beach, we encourage people to try to stay off the beach after dark during sea turtle nesting season. Because if you do encounter a sea turtle and she is not actually laying eggs, she probably is going to turn around and leave, and that nesting attempt will be lost. So that's why you see all the bumper stickers that say "Lights out, sea turtles dig the dark." It's about trying to keep that beach dark for those turtles. If you must be on the beach after dark, you can use red filters on the lights, but I'm not, to be honest, as a park ranger, I'm not a huge fan of that. There is evidence turtles actually can see red light, they just can't see it as well as others. And it is going to be at least some disturbance to them. Other things, make sure you don't leave the beach in an obstacle course. Make sure you take your debris with you. Things like plastic bags. What is a plastic bag floating in the ocean going to look like?
Jellyfish.
It's going to look almost exactly like a jellyfish, which is almost the sole diet of leatherbacks, but most of the other species of sea turtles love jellyfish as well. Another thing that you can do that's very important, if you enjoy seafood, especially shrimp. The shrimp fishery is the biggest commercial fishery in South Carolina. And if you enjoy shrimp, make sure you're buying locally caught shrimp. Sometimes the imported stuff can be a little bit cheaper, but if you're buying shrimp that were caught in South Carolina, you know that they were caught protecting sea turtles. In South Carolina, in fact, throughout the United States, shrimp trawlers are required to use turtle excluding devices in their nets. Back when I first started working with sea turtles back in the 80s, this was not the case. And drowning in a shrimp net was the main cause of death of adult sea turtles.
We didn't talk about turtles have lungs, not gills.
Yes, very important. Yes, they have lungs just like we do. They have to be able to access the surface to breathe in. They don't have gills like a fish. So by buying local seafood, that's one extra way you can make sure that you're ensuring the future of our sea turtles.
All right. So
well, no, the big one that I see is people digging in the fill your stuff up. Oh, sorry. I thought Mike was doing that. Okay, my bad.
We're teaming up.
Oh, sorry.
So,
This is
but
teamwork
as
here.
Barkley said, this is probably pollution is probably the #1 issue, I would think, leaving your trash behind. But a couple different things. A lot of people love to dig holes, and some of them dig massive holes, and that's all great and dandy. But keep in mind, before you leave the beach, it's your job to fill in that hole. Those holes are dangerous to people, but also, remember, Mike, can you show the little hatchling again? Sorry, we're going to give you whiplash. Put it on your palm so people see how small it is. So even little holes, hatchlings, it's very easy for them to get stuck in little holes. You're going to have a bigger hole to get stuck in a hole for a loggerhead, an adult, but there have been plenty of holes that have gotten an adult 300-pound sea turtle stuck. So we really need you to fill in your holes when you're done. A lot of us love to play, and notice us, adults, love to play with toys and everything, and that's great. But again, make sure that you take all this home. Again, this is all plastic. It's going to be out in the ocean. And by 2050, they're predicting there's going to be more plastic pieces in the ocean than animals, and that's just a really sad statistic, and we don't want that to happen. So all this stuff, even, you have to pick it up. So that's part of your job, to pick it up. Also, we love to build sand castles and things, or sand creations, which is fun, and take a picture of your art when you're done, because before you leave the beach, no matter how cute it was, no matter how cool that sea turtle was looking, what do you need to do? You need to stomp it down. I always tell parents, if you have a lot of energy and you're at the beach early evening before it gets dark, take the kids out, get lots of energy out, fill in those holes, pick up a few pieces of trash, and smash those sand castles. And it's the easiest way to help out sea turtles. It's a huge thing to do. The other thing keep in mind is also chairs and your surfboards and your umbrellas, tents. If you're allowed to have tents on the beach, you have to check your local ordinances throughout South Carolina, what you're allowed to have and not have. But almost I would think every beach community, don't you think, Mike, requires you to take those items off the beach each night. One, because the tide can come get them. Oh, keep in mind, Joe, later this week we're going to experience king tide, so plan your visits to beach. The tides are going to be huge in the next 4 or 5 days as we get later in the week. It's going to be hard to social distance, so keep that in mind. So we don't want items to wash out because you left it there because the tide took it out. Or also you don't want to create an obstacle course for sea turtles to get around. We had 8,800 sea turtle nests in South Carolina last year, but there were 15,000 false crawls, and that means they came up and didn't like they didn't like something for whatever reason. It could have been they just didn't like the beach. Maybe they encountered a chair. Maybe they encountered a fox on a beach that has no people on it. Maybe they did encounter a human or a dog off a leash, or even a dog on a leash. A dog is a predator to a sea turtle as far as a sea turtle is concerned. So there's all these different things you want to think about in order to help turtles. It's so easy to help out our state reptile, and we're hoping that everybody we want you to have fun when you go to the beach, but we also want you to do the right thing and make a difference every time you go to the beach. So I'm thinking, Barclay, are there any questions? There's so many things Mike and I have not covered in a half hour.
Someone just said something about what are the other diets, but I think they must have missed that part about jellyfish.
Leatherbacks, jellyfish, loggerheads, snails, and crabs. Loggerheads are going to be the least picky on the sea turtle buffet. They're going to eat a little bit of everything. But leatherbacks are jellyfish. Greens, as they get older, are more herbivores. When they're younger, they're going to eat a lot of different things. And Kemp's ridleys, real quick. Kemp's ridleys are our smallest turtles in our waters. We've only had 4 nests ever in the state, but they're very commonly seen off our fishing pier. This is an adult. Normally we see smaller ones about this big. They're really cute. They're going to be a different color. If you've noticed, all the turtles are very different looking and all different colors. And Kemp's are going to eat more crabs and snails again too. They're smaller. They especially love crabs. Yeah. And they kind of have I think I just lost my skull got lost. Sorry. Live, can't get it. What else do we want to, what else have we forgotten to mention?
There's one thing, and you might have mentioned it, but it is something I find people get confused a lot. So we've talked a good bit about how sea turtles nest multiple times over the course of the summer. They don't do that every year. They're going to take a couple, 2-3 years off between cycles. And we think one of the main reasons for that is being a turtle, having that hard, thick shell. You can fit eggs in there, or you can fit food, but you can't fit both. So we think the turtles are actually starving themselves during the course of the nesting season. And of course, they would have no future if they tried to do that every single summer.
So imagine, a lot of you are already thinking, oh, what am I going to eat for lunch today? But if there's a nesting turtle She may not eat for a couple more months if she's laying every 2 weeks.
It makes me sad.
Yeah, so it's a huge energy expenditure.
I know you said they're not doing the paternity part, but you said the females are 25. Do they know about what age the boys can be?
I don't know.
Yeah, there's so much that we don't know about the males of the species. Almost all the research has been done on the females because those are the only ones that are normally entering our world, coming up out of the ocean on the beach. The males never leave the ocean, so much far less is known about them.
Yeah, you can go to seaturtle.org, and there are some tagging projects that you can watch some of the turtles being tagged and moving around with satellites, but still, first they had to catch the male in the first place. Because also it's hard to tell, unless the male is, or the turtle is an adult, you don't know if it's a male or female yet. When there's younger turtles, they're juveniles. We don't know if they're male or female. So, yeah.
Hatchlings, how do they determine?
Oh, that's a good question. So hatchlings, Mike and I have been talking about temperature a lot. And temperature really determines almost everything about turtles. When they're going to emerge, when they're going to start nesting, how much they're going to eat if they're eating. But also, in that nest that Mike was talking about, temperature determines the sex of sea turtles. So warmer temperatures determine females. Cooler temperatures create males. And so we have the saying, Mike might have a different saying than I. They're always a tad different, but the same. Girls are hot. Boys are cooler. And in today's world, as our temperatures are rising with climate change, we're having a potential problem that we're very worried. We are having probably more female turtles out there, and the question is that we do not know how many male turtles do we need to have a healthy population.
In some countries, like in Australia, for example, they are already experimenting with shading nests to try to get a more even distribution of sexes from the hatchlings.
So earlier nests, these May nests, hopefully it'll still continue to get rain, it'll stay cooler, and hopefully those are gonna be the male nests in South Carolina. You know, they're maybe later nests in the season. We didn't even talk about this, gosh, there's so much to talk about. Turtles will lay eggs May, June, July, and August in South Carolina, and then it takes about 2 months, give or take, depending on temperature, for the eggs to emerge. So they'll start hatching probably sometime in July, and maybe go to October. Again, it depends when the last nest was laid, and then temperature too. So many things to talk about.
I think we're out of time.
Do we have any other questions?
Nope.
All right, one more thing. This is a great book that a lot of I know the coastal parks sell. This is a great book that has great information, awesome photos. And this guy, he's a little bit my hero. I met him a couple years ago and I fangirled on him.
Oh my god.
I did the same thing.
Oh my gosh.
But he has worked with turtles most of his life, and they're great photographers, they're great artists. So anyway, highly recommend you get this book.
I second that recommendation.
Yeah, we read this one all the time. And just, again, do your part. When you go to the beach, pick up your trash, fill in your holes, watch your lights, stay off the sand dunes, keep your dogs off on a leash. On a leash. And when you visit any of the parks in the next month, especially as we're still social distancing, don't forget your gloves, your mask, your hand sanitizer, and your patience. If you're going on a Saturday and it's nice and it's noon, there's a chance you might get turned away. So do your best to try to go at odd hours. Or, when you see that it's already the line is building, maybe go, we'll come back a different time. Do your part to help us out. Us rangers, we're very excited that the parks are open, that you're coming back. But do your best to help us out, too. It's your park, too, but it's our park, too. We want to protect everybody. And we very much appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you back out on the parks. All right, we're out. Mike and Ann from Huntington Beach State Park and Myrtle Beach State Park. Stay safe.